Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for coming out on this cold day to join us. Okay, everybody can hear me now? Yes, welcome. And we are the Rockport Affordable Housing Coalition, ROC. And our goal is to share information on affordable housing with the people of Rockport. It is ever changing and things are happening all the time. We research them and try to bring them to you. So we really appreciate your coming. Couple logistics, most of you know the restrooms are in the back left. There's cookies and candy. This time of day, you could use a little pick-me-up. So please indulge. And our format today is going to be, we have two speakers, Diane Vella from the Rockport Affordable Housing Trust and Charlie Seavey from the Housing Authority of Rockport. So they will give their presentations and then we'll have a question and answer period. And then we really would like to know from you what you might like to know more about so that for future forums, we can plan what's interesting to you. We make no bylaws, we make no laws, we're strictly providing information. If you want to get involved and have your voices heard, you can go to planning board meetings or select board meetings. That's where laws and bylaws are made. So I would just like to introduce my team who got this together. I am Barbara Kaplan, the chair of the Rockport Affordable Housing Coalition. Diane Vella, our first speaker. Charlie Seavey, our second speaker. Would you just stand up and wave to the crowd? Ihor Bellick, a team member. Jay Reed, another team member. And where is Mary Jo, who you met on your way in, and Kathy Gregg and Amy Seabrook, another team member. So that's kind of our core group. We do have about 12 to 15 that come to our meetings and attend different functions, but that's our core group. So I present Diane Vella, chair of the Rockport Housing Affordable Trust.
Say that again. The Rockport Affordable Housing Trust. And you'll hear us, okay, you be my person for the volume. Good, Mary. Please let me know if you can't hear me. So a lot of times when I talk about the trust. And what I mean is the Rockport Affordable Housing Trust. So that if you hear me say that, I'm only talking about the Rockport Affordable Housing Trust. The coalition is a group of citizens advocates that support affordable housing here in Rockport. My group, the Rockport Affordable Housing Trust, was appointed by the select board about 18 months ago. So we haven't been quite in business for two years of actually being seated in doing work. I think this is the fourth forum that the coalition ROC has put forward. So we try and educate you as much as possible on what's going on. And this is recorded. Please feel free to pass it on to somebody that's not here that has a question. So it's a good resource. So I really appreciate each one of you being here because this is one of the most complicated topics I have ever in my 75 years faced. I've raised children, I bought and sold houses and businesses. This is really complicated. So a lot of what I'm saying is going to try and make it as understandable as possible. If you have a question, please jot it down and make sure that we do answer it, or if I'm not clear about something, I would really appreciate that. Know that we're dealing with several levels if we are talking about affordable housing. There are federal rules, there are state rules, there are town rules, and so all of those kinds of things we may or may not have any impact on. So one of the things I want to do today is tell you about the things that we do have impact on, that we can move the ball forward in affordable housing. So to begin, I want to give you some very recent statistics and some information. 938 applicants were made for 39 affordable family units in Beverly. That's the latest affordable housing development that has gone up. 938 applicants for 39 units, and those were family units, 2 and 3 bedroom places. 17 evictions for renters in Rockport were filed between April and September of this year. 17 evictions. And this was taking in account anybody that says that this is a COVID backup. It was not. They adjusted for that. Millbrook Park, which Charlie will be talking about, our largest senior housing, affordable housing here in Rockport, has 1 ADA bathroom. You know what an ADA bathroom is? Yep. 1. And about half of them are upstairs. So our housing production plan says to us, we have a population that disabilities is rising, and we don't have a place to accommodate them in our biggest affordable housing development. This month, we're still in January, eh? This month, 7 teachers and 5 aides were announced to be laid off in the Rockport schools. 7 teachers and approximately, we don't know exactly, but somewhere around 130, 140 students live in affordable housing or in low market rate housing in Rockport. So the families are going into as much affordable housing as we can accommodate. We know that at least 2 restaurants have closed in Rockport. And that short-term leases, you know, VRBOs and Airbnbs, are now invading Bearskin Neck's commercial space. So where there used to be a business is now a short-term lease for VRBO. So the Rockport Affordable Housing Trust has some great news. That was the bad news. This is the good news. Now the good news, okay? So in our 18 months, now we have some money in our coffers to begin to attract the attention of affordable housing builders. We are attracting their attention. And we are in the process, this is wonderful news, we are in the process of speaking with the town to get town-owned property to develop affordable housing. The town of Rockport is the largest landowner in Rockport. So that's who we're going to, because if people say, oh, we can't do this because there's not enough land, well, we found some. So that's wonderful. And the town has been absolutely cooperative with us and absolutely on board with it. So I want you to hear that. And also we are making some inroads with some private developers to refurbish and increase the number of units and existing rental affordable housing units in Rockport. This is great news. So we've got about 4 pans in the fire, if you follow my thinking. So I think it's important to understand, how does this building happen in any town, much less Rockport? It's important we understand this. So the first thing that has to happen is that the builder gets control of the land. And when they get control of the land, they have to clear all the issues like title, water and sewer, conservation. All of those things have to be cleared. That's the first step. Then an affordable housing developer will address different kinds of abutter issues and will assess, follow the Rockport zoning ordinances and laws to take a look at all of those kinds of things. So we're looking at a developer, an affordable housing developer, that's not going to put up a Hilliard. I want you to be clear about that. They're not going to put up a Hilliard. Hilliard is that big development that when you're coming off of Blackburn Circle, it's over, you know, by yeah. So a lot of people get nervous when we say affordable housing. They'll point to that and go, oh God. And we'll talk a little bit more about how that happened. They do have affordable units. Oh yes, they do. We'll talk about, I know. That's a different animal. So But anyway, any of those issues that I just named can delay work up to 3 years. Okay, so know that the trust is working as fast as it can. So we don't want delays up to 3 years, especially if there are objections from abutters and there are delays from zoning and all those kinds of delays. The trust will work really hard to get those cleared up. The next big step is an affordable housing developer will come to the trust. Notice there's no shovels in the ground yet. They come to the trust, the Affordable Housing Trust, and get as much money from us. Why? Because they need to go to the lenders, the banks, and they need to establish the will of our town. And the way that they do that is they have a public affordable housing municipal trust that has money, that gives them money to get started. They take it to the bank and they say, look, we got a town who's ready. We got a town who wants this. I want you to help us provide the financing for it. For instance, Harbor Light Homes did the Granite Street Crossing units, if you recall, those of you were thinking about that. And CPC gave them money over a few years in $120,000, $104,000 increments. Our strategy is different because they were giving Harbor Light that money after there were already houses being built. We want to give the money to the developer very early on. That's what's going to secure them. We don't want the developer to come in here and say, oh God, now we need the money. So our strategy is to fund a builder as large as our budget will allow to expedite the financing and to improve the will of this town, which is critical in order to get financing. And this also helps us avoid delays, lawsuits. Lawsuits are a huge disincentive to builders, and they happen. And then they go on to, after that, they go on to the permitting process here through the, either to the planning board or to the zoning board of appeals. And then they start applying for state funding and state subsidizing. And remember the kind of money that we're talking about, the trust. And again, you are the funders of the trust for CPC and some of the other funding streams I'll tell you about. This becomes yours. You're the funder. So that's important that you understand this. And what we do, we do supply a small percentage of the total fundings. For instance, in Granite Street Crossing, it was less than 5% of the funding that was given to them from the town of Rockport. CPC, everybody know what CPC is? Community Preservation money. At fall town meeting, they talk about it. And we have different, people get different funded, and the Housing Trust got funded last fall for the first time. It is the most common yearly funding source for municipal trusts in Massachusetts. And many municipal trusts rely on them every year. CPC, by the way, is allowed to spend up to 75% of their budget on housing. So this is a place where we might have some impact. This is a place where we might encourage CPC to fund the trust. That's one way you have some impact. At the same time, the trust is looking for many different ways to fund it. We're not going to be reliant on CPCs. So it's important. And CPC is not necessarily stable funding. That fluctuates over time. So why all of this leveraging and state funding and all that stuff is because it costs the same amount of money to build a market rate unit as it does an affordable unit. Costs the builder the same amount of money. Okay, somewhere between $400,000 and $600,000. So how does an affordable housing builder make up that money? They make it up by going to the state and getting subsidies. And these are for things like veterans, unhoused people. It can be for families. It can be for people with disabilities. So those are all funding streams within the state that do apply, that do fund housing for those folks. Not exclusively. The Affordable Housing Trust can fund anywhere from 80% of the average area median income to 80% to 30%. And see, lots of other places don't have that kind of stretch. We have that whole stretch. And that's important to remember as we talk about other things. So it's important that, and then a private builder, people are probably wondering, what about a private builder? And private builders go through inclusionary zoning, which, who was at the meeting on Thursday night? Oh, okay, great. So you understand a little bit about inclusionary zoning. We'll talk about that in a minute again, too. But be aware that there are what's called naturally occurring affordable housing in Rockport. What does that mean? Well, one of the examples is Rockport Commons. Does everybody know where Rockport Commons is? Take a drive through there someday. Rockport Commons. And know that when there's naturally occurring affordable housing, again, it costs a certain amount of money to maintain it, and the folks are not paying as much money. So where the private builder makes it up is, they're refurbishing and their upkeep might not be up to snuff. And if you know anybody that lives in Rockport Commons, they'll tell you all about that. So it's important that we apply for those state subsidies and stuff, so that does not happen. That does not happen to us. With an affordable housing builder, that the state subsidies support the tenants and make up for the loss in rent, then an affordable housing builder would suffer, if you would, because they can't rent it for what the market rate is here in Rockport. So more good news. By the way, all affordable housing that we are interested in is 100% affordable housing, not 10%. Not 50%, it's 100%. So that spectrum is important that you know that that's what we're interested in doing. We're interested in developments that are 100% affordable housing. So there's a couple other wonderful things that are happening in Rockport, just so you know. The zoning board is making zoning improvements for housing and that's underway, and most of those are for private builders. That's inclusionary zoning. So in other words, if a builder comes in and says, well, I want to build an 8-unit apartment complex or condo, a certain percentage of that has to be affordable housing. This is a very complicated thing that I can tell lots of explanation about. But one of the things that can happen that would help the trust is that we can say to that builder, it's really difficult to apply for marketing, lottery, all of these things that are state rules. We have no impact on that. The state rules, if you want to build an affordable unit, you gotta do all of that stuff. Costs an enormous amount of money to do it and a lot of time. I wish I would have brought in the packet for Granite Street Crossing. It's about this thick that they apply for the state. So one of the things that the planning board is considering is saying to the builder, well, we'll let you not build that affordable unit if you pay the trust. Now, why would that be a good idea? If you pay the trust, what are we building? What are we interested in building? 1 unit, 2 units, 100%. Okay, so think about that. Also, ADUs can now be built in any zoning district. I don't know if you remember the town meeting when that was very contentious, that, well, how come the ADUs can only be built in one place? Now they can be built anywhere. So that's also a good idea. Affordable housing, including zoning, is probably going to come up at the spring town meeting. That's where we have impact. We have impact in this town by town meetings. So make sure you're there, you get informed, and you vote the way you want to do it. There will be a hearing on March 6th if you want more information about inclusionary zoning. Also, an annual registration fee for the first time. VRBOs and Airbnbs in Rockport has been like the Wild West here. So that's starting to make some changes. So an annual registration fee for short-term leases is being implemented by the town, which would be great. An annual registration fee. It would fund the inspections for fire, health, and building inspection. We need this. People are coming into our town and going into a building that they know nothing about. So that's really important. But it will also, they're considering a percentage of that registration fee to come to the trust. Why is that important? Because one of the things that has killed year-round rentals has been the short-term leases. So that's good news. All of these efforts improve the outlook for housing in Rockport and the financial stability of the trust. The trust is instrumental in advocating for these and other zoning laws. We go to planning board meetings, we go to select board meetings. We are extremely locally focused. Oh, make one over time. Okay. So it's important that you know that we're very, very locally focused. And just about nobody in Rockport, when I ask them, what do you think about affordable housing? Oh, yes, we need it. Oh, yes, we need it. But it's important that we understand that there are some roadblocks here. There are roadblocks, and it's important that we understand there's a difference between saying you want affordable housing and doing what's necessary to make it happen. Some of the things that I hear is affordable housing will not help our community. Well, it really is. It provides a choice that not everybody wants to buy a home. And they can do affordable housing that are condos and stuff like that, but know that that's a very small, again, one or two, and that's not really where we are at. And if anybody reads the New York Times, they've been publishing articles about how not X, what's the next one? Z? Gen Z are not necessarily interested in buying homes. Why? Because they have 2 kids and a dog and 2 big jobs, and they don't want to cut the grass. They don't want to do all of the maintenance, and that they are starting now to say, if you take that pot of money that you would be spending in your insurance for your house and all these other kinds of things that you would need for home ownership and invested that, you would be making out just about the same as you would for the housing increasing. Not probably in Rockport because we've seen this big jump, but over the long haul, again, this is long picture information. It's very interesting. I have 2 daughters, one of which has always been in a rental and has no desire to have a house. She's too busy. She's a single mom. She's not interested. I'm a single person. I have a house, and I'm thinking, and I started to keep track of all of the money that I have to spend for maintenance and stuff like that, and I'm going to go rental. Anyway, the tax rate for multifamily units is much higher than single family homes. Our zoning in our town really favors single family homes to a degree that it has hurt us in getting multifamily and multi-unit, I should say, development, because we really see our charge is both for seniors and for families. Remember that dirt does not pay taxes. You know what I mean by that? If it's a if it's a park, if it's town owned, it doesn't pay taxes. We need some taxes in this town. And know that the town and the trust, we would negotiate certainly with developers about making sure that the community space was there, parks were there, things like that were a part of that development. Affordable housing does not fit into our community. Well, residents of affordable housing sometimes are painted as outsiders, bringers of crime, that are, people get afraid of folks that don't look like them or don't have families like them. And affordable housing, remember, in this HUD district that we're in, which we have no control over, has an area median income of almost $150,000. The Rockport area median income is just below $90,000. So you understand that a lot of our affordable housing will go for teachers, DPW workers, town workers, and senior citizens on a fixed income. It's important that we understand that and also we are committed to a 70% local preference. That's the highest we can get. That's when we're committed to that in terms of affordable housing. So it is for our essential workers and our young families and our seniors. Some people say affordable housing hurts property values. The research says that's not true. It supports local business, their staffs, and it increases discretionary spending because they're year-round residents. And there's lots others. I have lots of others. I could go on for days. So, and I'm getting the wrap up from this lady. But one of the things I really want to say before is that everything that I've learned about it, I'm a volunteer. Everything I've learned about affordable housing has been in the last 2 years of study that I have done. I encourage you to get on commissions. We have select board positions open. We have planning board positions open. We have, my trust has positions open. Charlie has positions open on the housing authority. We need people to begin to step up and make this happen, not just at town meetings, but those commissions have the most impact on creating affordable housing here in the state. We can all learn, we're all in this together. It affects all of us. And I would encourage you, in knowing all of those 4 pans in the fire, the time is now. The time is now to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Diane, and I hope you're having questions for her in a little while. Right now, I'm going to introduce Charlie Seavey from the Housing Authority. I think as Rockporters, we know very little about our state housing developments. And even if we don't, some of us may not even know they exist. So that's why we invited Charlie here to give us a little update about what's going on with the town and the Housing Authority and our state development. Thank you, Charlie.
Can you hear me now? Okay, I can't resist things like that. As I told any number of audiences over the years, I have to stick to my notes here, or I'll get telling stories, which would be telling stories about growing up in Rockport. And we'll be here all day, which is not the point of this session. I'm getting a big negative from over here. I want to talk some about the background of the Housing Authority so we all understand its nature, which is 100% affordable. There seems sometimes to be a wee bit of confusion on the topic, hence this background, and it's just the kind of thing I do anyway. All of the quotes that I'm going to put in here, which I will indicate thusly, come from either town reports or the Gloucester Daily Times articles on the topic. If you haven't used the digitized GDT archive, boy, let me tell you, it beats microfiche any old day or microfilm. Okay, the Housing Authority was proposed by the Board of Selectmen in 1948 to provide low-cost rental housing for the veterans. Remember, World War II was just 3 years old at that stage of the game. Special town meeting approved the plan, and the Housing Authority was established. The Board of Selectmen appointed 4 town residents as members, with the 5th member to be appointed by what was then called the State Housing Board. Success? Not quite, as it turned out. The State Housing Board initially turned down the town's plan because other towns have greater needs. Our state representative, a guy named Richard Hull, who was a Rockport guy. Anybody remember? Yeah, okay, nobody's as old as I am. So anyway, Dick Hull and the chair of the Housing Authority, a fellow named William Cottle, who's also the superintendent of schools, met with the State Housing Board in Boston and convinced them otherwise. The State Housing Board authorized 12 units to be constructed. Starting September 1st, 1949, groundbreaking commenced at what became known as Oak Circle, which you've all driven by if you've been down South Street. That was the first public housing in Rockport. According to the 1949 town report, this will not be a Quonset hut operation, as has been done elsewhere, but a modest but substantial project that will be a real answer to the town asset. Sometimes I can talk, which of course it has turned out to be. Time goes by. Oak Circle eventually gets privatized. Millbrook, long before the ADA, I should point out, gets built, and then Kitefield Road later on, and the future looks open, maybe. My point being that the housing authority and public housing is not something imposed upon the town by the state. It was a Rockport idea, and we had to fight for it. The housing authority is an integral part of the town. Now, the blurb for this session said something about disproving myths about public housing, some of which I hope I just did. Some answers to myths. No, there are not 10 empty units at Millbrook Park because of mold issues. Complete nonsense. There are currently 2 empty units there and none at Kitefield Road. No, the state is not forcing us to house immigrants, legal or otherwise. Of course, everybody there, unless Native American, is an immigrant of one sort or another. And even if you go back far enough, so the Native Americans for that matter. Current residents. Millbrook Park has residents in 80 units, either elderly or disabled in some fashion. I'll get back to that in a minute. Kitefield Road is occupied by 26 families with a total of 47 children, who are roughly 7% of the total enrollment in Rockport Public Schools. Meditate on that for a while. Yeah, and I know probably not all of them are in school, but the fact is there are 47 kids there and they're going to be in school eventually. Again, we'll come back to that. Administratively, and for the majority of funding, the housing authority is under a thing called I hate this, the Massachusetts Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, which I will refer to as the EO from now on, because I'm not about to repeat all that. Keep track, there might be a quiz. Fancy name for the long past State Housing Board, with which we did battle in 1948. Now, most of this next section comes directly out of what the EO directs or has, directives and requirements on. The requirements, the first requirement for public housing under the authority of the Housing Authority is low income, defined by the state as 80% of the area median income, about which more in a minute or so. Then, once that income level is established, elderly means over 60, which makes me extremely elderly. And I'm not going to get into the term my daughters used to talk about me. Disabled can mean either mentally or physically disabled in some fashion. All of this subject to lengthy procedure and interpretation criteria laid out by the state. The lists of folks eligible for public housing are maintained and controlled by the state. The local housing authorities, not just Rockport, but the whole state, have no control over who gets on the list and very limited control over who gets into Millbrook Park or Kitefield Road. You may sense some possible problems in this situation, and you'd be correct. And there's more to come, which I'll get to. So with some background on the housing authority, let's consider the impact of the town. And remember what I said about the number of Kitefield Road kids in the public school system. State law mandates that 10% of year-round housing stock in a locality must be affordable. Generally, affordable means that a household would pay 30% or less of their monthly income for housing. Percentage of income is based on the AMI, which Diane mentioned a couple of minutes ago, area median income as determined by the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development. A community's level of affordable housing, known as the SHI, or Subsidized Housing Inventory. Acronyms, this goes back to my Army years where everything had an acronym. It'll make it crazy figuring stuff out. Anyway, Rockport has a total of 3,565 year-round housing units, according to the Federal Census Bureau. As of 2023, 135 of those were listed as SHI units, making the town's progress towards the mandated 10% SHI 3.79%, which ain't all that great. Now, it developed just in the last month, 6 weeks, Pete, something like that, that the state was somehow only counting half of Millbrook Park, 40 units instead of 80. Instant increase in the town's SHI up to about 6%, which is a lot healthier. And I'm not sure if that includes the Granite Street Harbor Lights project or not. It does, Pete? Yeah, I don't either.
It would. Whether the state's gonna do
whether
it
the
or-
state's
yeah.
gonna round it with it,
Right.
given their view of
Yes.
Millbrook Park, one never knows. Anyway, the point here is that the Housing Authority's 140 units are a major contributor to the town's SHI, a public good, if you will. The other point, obvious, I hope, is that a great deal of what affects public housing in Rockport is determined by state and federal government, both of which cannot be influenced by the housing authority. The town, on the other hand, can at least have some influence on the state. If you remember my beginning story about Representative Hull and Mr. Cottle's battle with the state housing. Whether the town is willing to try and exercise any influence depends very much on the select board and how hard they're willing to push. As far as influencing the feds go, that was once a difficult proposition and is now probably impossible given the current whirling vortex of chaos in Washington. Sorry, I just get a little hot under the collar. Anyway, so what's in the future, which I think also been mentioned in the blurb for coming to this thing. The Housing Authority has in place an annual capital improvement plan as mandated by the state. However, the capital improvement plan was written before the state approved the bond issue last fall. Remember that election we had? There's an enormous amount of money involved. And a great deal of the future depends on when and how the state unleashes all that money. And I think they're just in the opening steps of starting to turn that loose. So all this possible money. Millbrook Park was built in 2 sections in the 1960s. It's getting old, even older than me. Various proposals have been floated around, one of which is adding 3rd floors and elevators, along with a complete overhaul of the existing units, including new HVAC systems. Another idea is to drop the whole thing and build new structures in the same area with an expanded potential clientele, possible multi-generational family units. Kitefield was built in 1898. I'm a historian, give me a break. 100 years here, 100 years there. 1989 is when Kitefield was built. And at the very least, should get a new HVAC system and improved insulation. There's a fair amount of town-owned land, as Diane mentioned, within the MBTA zone that could be used for new public housing projects. At which point we start getting into the politics of it. And if you've been following the battle in Manchester, you know what I'm talking about. And I don't want to get but so far down that road, other than to reiterate my point that public housing, housing authority housing contributes a great deal to the town's SHI. As I said, a great deal depends on how the state decides to disperse the bond money. What criteria will they use? They have to think that any proposal that includes lower amounts of energy use would be looked on with favor. We'll just have to wait and see. We'll know more as the state starts disgorging information on how they're going to do this to get rid of all this money. In the meantime, I hope I've convinced you that the housing authority is part of the town. It's been here since 1948. It's 100% affordable housing, and it has a definite impact on the town. Over.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charlie. I know a lot more about it now than I did, and I think it's important information, and that these people are important in our town for many reasons. So we've left a lot of time for questions and answers because usually we run out of time. So if anyone has a question, one moment, just raise your hand. Jay Reed is going to come over to you with the mic. If any of our Zoomers, whom I did not welcome, Tom will read off. They have questions in the chat. We would like to answer them as well. And if we don't get to answer all the questions, the Zoomers will get to you because we have your emails. And in the audience, jot down on one of the stickers from the back and just stick it on that board, and we will get back to you or show you where you can get that information. We really want to be communicators of information, and we want you to access information. So I'll stop talking. Who has a question?
Okay.
You got the mic.
Okay,
Great.
Mary Frances. I think it would be very, very helpful if when you all do your presentations to the public as well as scenes like this, you tell people exactly what kind of money you're talking about. Saying 20% of our affordable blah, 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 that goes right over people's heads.
Sure.
When they hear what kind of money we're talking about, a lot of people are going to say, I don't even make that much.
Mhm.
Be clear and make a difference between affordable and low income, because there is a difference. And I think that will make things better.
Thank you. Diane's going to speak to you.
There is a handout that has the actual dollar amounts for the different, from 80% to 30%. And also there is a difference between, you know, the housing authority is government owned and government operated. The Affordable Housing Trust is private builders and not-for-profit builders. We have both, so there's a difference. And the housing authority usually does that low-income housing that you're talking about. We could do housing that is in the low-income category, but we have more of a spectrum of those housing.
That's the kind of
So you have that.
nitty-gritty that people need to.
Well, it's right here and
Yeah, well,
absolutely.
I never see this ever. I never see this actually written. Just okay. The top is this much, down to 30%, which is this much.
Okay. Thank you.
Simple.
Yeah. Well,
Thank
yeah, you got it now.
I got it, but who else knows it?
Well, everybody, you know, anybody can ask me. I'm happy to come and have dinner with you or coffee at Brothers and explain it, you know, because some people don't like the minutia. They like the big picture. So we go for both directions.
But also there's websites that have this information, and we can send that out to you so that you can see that 80% of AMI for Rockport is a $90,000 income for a single, that kind of thing.
For a single, but
I
yeah.
understand your
for two
question.
people, 80% is 104,400.
Right.
How many people here are bringing in? Oh. How many people here are bringing in $104,480 a year. That's for two people.
No, we understand, and we want everybody to have a chance to ask the question, but you're absolutely correct. And 80% is not really affordable, even for work class or
So-
kids with degrees out of college and so forth. Tom, do you want to pick somebody from Zoom so we don't ignore our Zoomers?
We have a question from Bella Windsor on Zoom. There are few year-round rentals in town. What limits are there currently on Airbnb and other short-term rentals? Do they have to be owner occupied, and what does that mean? Is there a maximum or minimum amount of time? I see short-term rentals as a major factor in increasing rents and home prices in town.
It's a good question because it has a big impact. There's about 358 known short-term rentals in Rockport. It's a huge percentage. Your question is, no, they don't need to be owner occupied. No, they don't, there's companies that just buy these houses up and divide them and stuff like that. No, they're not regulated in Rockport yet. Again, remember what I said, that this registration fee is going to start to do that. We're a little bit late to the party on it, but we are starting. This is good news to start on having registration fees so that we know where are they and are they safe? Did I get all pieces of that question?
No,
What did I miss?
Owner occupied?
the ADUs that the planning board,
Oh. Yeah, the ADUs are not short-term leases. ADUs are different, and we talked about ADUs. So that's different. ADUs have a minimum of 6 month rental on them. Short-term leases we can rent for a day. It doesn't matter. So those are becoming regulated. I think that's it for that question.
Jay, do you want to bring the mic?
I don't need it.
Well, she's next. After her. You're next, Gerard. Sure.
I would like to know what's being done to formulate these regulations. Is there a committee that's going to report to the select board about what the recommendation is? Because that's something I think a lot of people might want to participate in.
If this is a select board decision, they've made the decision to have the registration fees, the annual registration fees. They know that they will have fire inspection, health inspection, and building inspection, those three different, but beyond that, that's as far as they've gotten. And that a percentage of that yearly registration fee, a piece of that undetermined as of yet by the select board would come to the trust. So this is getting them to people to say that they're doing this. That's the first step in any kind of regulation.
But I would advise you to come to select board meetings and voice how concerned you are. They meet every 2 weeks on a Tuesday night. It's on the website and their Zoom. And I think that's the important thing, is that they hear the voices of the people, because they do make the rules and the laws.
Is there a resident participation of
Can't hear
people
you.
that are gonna put support?
There's always a public, what do they call it? Public comment at the beginning and the end of each meeting. So I mean,
So
it's,
limited.
There's
It's
not a
very-
committee. There's not a
There's not a
committee, if that's what you're asking. There's not a committee, but I know select board members are working on it.
Gerard is next.
Yeah, I don't quite understand that about codes. And I thought, I'm not talking loud enough. It's being recorded. Okay. I don't quite understand that. I thought all towns had codes and enforced by a zoning board, a zoning person. But my question had to do with you were talking about 100% of units, anything being built, being affordable housing. I wonder how much the builders would want to do that, and how much the town would want to do that as well. Are they in line with that? Would they be in line with that, especially the town? That's the question number. You both gave great presentations. And question number 2 is about will you be building along the MBTA required areas for any housing, or will this, what you're talking about, allowing building and any open space in the town. of,
There's no land for sale in the MBTA 3A district. We can't do anything unless somebody sells us or gives us or transfers the land.
So none of that.
None of that,
MBTA
none of
this
it's for
town,
sale.
though?
No,
Well, that's surprising. Okay.
not that I know. of. That's possible. I don't know. I'd have to go look at the chart, but, those are not the pieces of property that we're looking at this point.
Okay.
What was the beginning question? I have short-term memory.
That's it, I say, as everyone in the room does. The other question was about, don't we have a codes?
Well, we
I
have,
don't understand
for a
this.
single family home, sure, you have building codes and those kinds of things, but unless you're building in your house, so you don't have an inspector come to your house, you don't have a fire inspector come to your house, you don't have a health inspector come to your house. So if you have an ADU in your basement or your attic or your backyard or wherever, I mean, not an ADU, a short-term lease. No,
That's not covered?
no, that's why, yeah, I know it's shocking.
Any livable space would be covered, any
It
place
just
for
isn't,
humans.
it just isn't, in short-term leases as Airbnb and VRBO.
Just one last question. You mentioned lawsuits, and a concern is, are there groups in the town that are in line to oppose anything in the future? And I mean, it would be make everything, all this hard work for naught if something is delayed by a lawsuit for 2, 5, 10 years.
Can I answer that? We just don't know. And if it is, we'll
Okay,
deal
I
with
know
it when it happens. It's just one of those
It's
things.
a hard question to
It
answer,
is,
for sure.
it's abstract because we don't know. We
Yes.
wish we did, but even if we did, process would happen and.
It's
and we deal
usually,
with it.
yeah, it's usually the abutters. It's usually the abutters that will file a lawsuit. We try real hard, Granite Street Crossing did work really hard with the abutters there. It took 6 years for those buildings to be occupied from the time that they bought that land, 6 years.
Mhm.
So, I don't feel like we don't have that much time, or I'll be dead. So.
Okay, any other questions, please? Yes, Carol.
Hi, thank you for your presentations. You mentioned the new state of housing bond bill, and this is to Charlie. Will the RHA be able to access this money to use for updating and repairing our current units?
I sure hope so. Yeah, I mean, as I said, we have at this stage absolutely no idea how the state is going to structure this thing. They've just made the first steps towards saying, oh yeah, okay, we've got all this money. Now we got to figure out how we're going to do it. I would hope that the housing authority, not just in Rockport, but all the locale housing authorities might have a slight edge up on getting all the money. After all, it's all state property, strictly speaking. Again, I think the more muscle that the select board is willing to put behind it would help. I keep coming back to that original 1948 fight where we actually had an impact. So we'll know more as the state starts disgorging how they're gonna do this. I wish I had the answer for you. If we did, I'd be out there digging shovels, starting structure right now, but no.
I also wonder if we have any grant writers in the audience, because I have a strong feeling that to access this money, people are gonna have to write grants. So even if you're not super grant writer, I once worked on something and knew nothing. It's doable if you feel like putting your mind to it. So if you, get in touch, because I think that's gonna be a way. Yeah. Any other questions, please? Maybe, Tom, would you do a Zoom first? No, because we don't want to ignore those people.
And Bill Tolman had a question about ADU laws impacting affordable housing. Is that answered already?
No. ADUs, accessory dwelling units, are different than short-term leases, what we're like VRBOs and stuff like that. A part of that affordable housing bill that we're talking about, they said that an ADU can be built in any zoning district, that the town cannot say they can only be in certain districts, which they were. Now they can be built in any zoning district. And that is, whether that's in your home, but this is up to a 900 square foot building. That the belief is that these will help provide, housing for workers. For instance, we are a coastal community that has workers that are only here for a certain period of time. That's the hope. There was just a whole thing on the news about the ADUs that are being built and the good impact that this had in different towns. This is not a new concept. They are regulated. The state has come, so that you can't build to quote somebody, a chicken coop. You have to be able to build something that
No
is.
Quonset huts.
Yeah, no Quonset huts. Tiny homes are a big deal right now.
Mhm.
You can, basically they bring it in on a flatbed truck. So, that would be, something that maybe people would begin to look at. So it is now, can be anywhere in the town.
And just to add to that, Diane, I listened to a seminar, the rules for ADU by the state are changing. And so Rockport is going to be working on complying and coordinating with the state. And if you go to mass.gov online, this section 8, chapter 1-50, accounts of 2024, you'll see the new requirements for ADUs. And they are quite broadened in terms of parking space, in terms of size, in terms of number and things like that. So that is a good resource, mass.gov, to find out more about ADUs. Another question, please?
Hi, Jean Keith. Diane, thank you for your excellent presentation, and yours too, Charlie. My question is about available data for the demand for affordable housing in Rockport. I think you mentioned Beverly in 23 maybe. And I'm just wondering, have we any idea what the demand for affordable housing in Rockport is currently and what's unmet?
We have a housing production plan that was done. The select board funded that, and that's something that's required. That is the document that gives you the information. I think it's 81 pages. You probably don't want to read that part, but that gives all of the information that you would need that substantiates our issue. We have seniors that are having to move away. For instance, our latest affordable housing was Granite Street Crossing. They had 17 senior units. They have 17 senior units there. Over 300 people applied. We have 6 or 7, I can't remember, family units, little townhouses, 6 that are there, and there's 14 kids there for our, that are staffing, getting into our schools. So the need is huge. About half, according to the government statistics, about half of the people that live in Rockport are what's considered housing cost burden, which means that more than 30% of their income is going toward their housing expenses. That's substantial in terms of our, and 50% of the people that work in Rockport, DPW, teachers and stuff like that, don't live here, can't afford it.
Another question, Jay?
This lady had.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Last year, someone from Gloucester came to one of the meetings. She said that there's so many people waiting in Gloucester that some people die before they even get in. But are there any towns that there's no waiting list? Probably not.
Probably
But
not.
here, it seems like we haven't begun building any more homes, and I can't understand how long it would take before we even get to see more homes built.
You bring up a good point, and the housing crisis is not new. It's been going on for years and years and years, and people, nothing substantial was done for it, so you're probably right. I don't think we have that data.
Well, we know that affordable housing was a number one priority in where's Mary Jo Curley? I think it was done in 1973.
Yeah.
It was said that we needed affordable housing. And then there was another one that the planning board had done, in 2017, said affordable housing needs to be done. It has not been a priority for this town. It's important. That's why we're stressing, go to the meetings, get on, run for the select board. They have an open seat. Run for the planning board. They have two. Come and, those are the kinds of things that we really need to see town support, not just at town meeting. Town meeting is not the place for you to learn about this. It's too complicated. Come and learn about it so that you know how to vote, what's going to move this ball forward. So thank you for that.
One of the things we have to get away from is the idea that the only way to live is a single family house. It's just unsustainable. We don't have the room in Rockport. It won't work. We have to start looking towards more multi-family housing options. Because single family housing just isn't going to do it. There's no way. One of my nephews is a very smart guy. He's a real estate agent. And his rule of thumb, which I think probably overstates it, but his take is that if a place is not building the same number of houses every year as the number of kids that graduate from high school, you're on a downward spiral. And of course, we're nowhere near that. And of course, we can't build that many single family units anyway. So we should erase that whole criteria from our thinking.
Thanks, Charlie. Another question from the Zoomers, please.
Zoom writes, there was a town housing needs survey that was intended to document housing needs. What has happened to the results? Are they published? Does this mean the housing production plan?
Yeah, the housing production plan is available on the town website. It also is on the trust has a page on the town website. It's available there. It's not something that we necessarily print off because it is so big. So it is available. I mean, if you really, really, really wanted it, you could email me and I'd send it to you. It'll clog up your computer.
Another question from the audience, please.
Yes, the housing production plan has been repeatedly referred to, and a lot of effort went into that. It's now an official document of, is it working? And now an official document of some sort. But you should know that the people who did it solicited the public to fill out forms. I did, and I regret that I did it. I felt some of the questions were impertinent, invasive, but I filled it out. About 250 people filled that out. So that's statistically nowhere in terms of, the town of Rockport wants this or the town of Rockport wants that. It might be a fair indication or it might not. And now in the proposed affordable housing zoning, it's got into the zoning under purpose as something that we're going to use as a standard for achieving the affordable housing. So I regard that with some distrust and suspicion. Yes, you need some sort of a plan, but the Board of Selectmen signed off on that, voted to adopt it. Tom can say whether the planning board did. I should remember and don't. Did? Yes, but it was never offered to a town meeting, and now it's an official document. Diane said about the ADUs that you couldn't do a chicken coop. I referred to them rudely as the chicken coop apartments. If you read that carefully, they have to look like surrounding buildings and be, in terms of aesthetics, a word you wouldn't use in zoning, acceptable. But that's only facing public ways. So you could have a tar paper shack if the building inspector would bless it, facing the unfortunate neighbors. And about the ADUs, a lot of hope goes into the hope those that they'll provide housing for people who otherwise couldn't afford housing. But you, no town body, we're talking about private property, can dictate the rentals, the prices at which they are rented, okay? And if somebody comes from Boston or Cambridge and wishes to rent a weekend pad and can pay whatever you're asking for the rent, that's the person you, the landlord, are going to rent to, not somebody who might be needy. So the supposition that those are going to, undo the crisis for housing for people who earn small sums of money is more wishful thinking than not. And what's basically wrong, I'm not knocking your efforts. I think the direction and the hope is admirable. But in every case, we're talking about private property. And so unless whoever is putting the money into it to do it is going to make a profit, it isn't going to happen. And that's what's wrong with the state's formula for what qualifies about affordable housing. The 80% of the AMI, somebody spoke of that. I thought it was 91,000 for a single person. That's a lot of money and totally ignores the interests of those, the working poor at the bottom of the economic ladder. And with minimum wage, you earn $31,000 a year and nobody can afford to build housing for you unless it is the housing authority. So the hope that you're going to get something for nothing, a free lunch out of private funds is a forlorn hope.
Toby, we've established that ADUs cannot be rented for anything less than 6 months. So the rest of your tirade is generally on spot, but about ADUs, yeah, it's not gonna happen the way you described.
Also, know that the 30% or what we're talking about, those are income limits. That's the upper level. So yes, the upper level for one person in this housing district is $90,000, but that's the upper limit for somebody who can apply. Anybody can apply underneath that. So
Lowest
again,
level is 30,000. 34,000.
exactly, if you have kids and stuff like
No,
that,
one
so.
person.
Right, so I mean, know that those numbers are upper limits. They're not, that's not what people, you're gonna get people that are way under that as well, so.
Unless they have housing vouchers, the people who are doing the renting will end for the upper edge of the limit naturally, because they're going to make more money.
That's not true for affordable housing, 100% affordable housing, builders like Harbor Light Homes. They absolutely, if you look at Harbor Light Homes that we have now, their upper limit is 60%. And the bulk of them are people that was upper limit is at 30%. So for private builders, that may be so, Toby. But for affordable housing builders, because they rely on the subsidies that come through the state and stuff like that, which are different than the governmental subsidies that Charlie's talking about. But the proof is in the pudding. If you look at, the Harbor Light Homes manages the high school apartments, and there's nobody at 80% there. I don't know what it is, but there's nobody there. They're much, much, much lower than that, because that's what qualifies them to get the money stream that they need to support that housing.
Thanks, Diane. Another question from the audience? Meg, the woman over on the side, had her hand up for a while.
I heard that there's actually 2 housing trusts in town. I don't know if that's true, and if it is, what the difference might be.
Yes, there's a private community land trust, and land is the operative word. It's private. The municipal trust is a public trust. You can come to our meetings, you can read our minutes and stuff like that. A private one is that's what do they call it? Proprietary. And what they do, the different is that they actually buy land. The land stays in the trust. So for the municipal trust, we don't buy land. we're getting money to get to the right people to build things. We're not landlords, we're not owners. You know, that's not our bailiwick.
Do they as well build affordable housing or just market rate housing?
My understanding, and I have a chart, if you, there's in a handout that shows the different, you know, the housing authority, you know, the different trusts, that they have, their goal is to build affordable housing, but they don't have to. There's no constraint on that.
Thank
It's
you.
a related question on Zoom, if you'd like.
Sure.
Bill Tobin asks, in the housing production plan, the Affordable Housing Trust and the Community Land Trust were included as sources to assist the affordable housing information and building. Have these two bodies begun working together?
Well, I don't think they have. I think that's a great question. And I think we could invite them to begin working together. So I don't know.
My understanding is they were invited to participate here, but they chose not to.
Oh, yeah, that's such a, we were supposed to have this in November and Diane and I got COVID and I forgot all about that. But that is true. Yes, that is true. So we can go from here, though. We persist. We always, you know, it's a long-term project, this business. Jay, would you bring the mic to someone who hasn't spoken probably?
So on the affordable units, will people be applying for this? That's my first question.
Mhm.
And how does that process work?
Okay.
Very complicated. First thing they have to do is there's regulations for an actual marketing plan. So they have to in a certain way, have to let people know that these units are going to become available. So they follow the rules on that. The second is that anybody that qualifies under those income levels, they go into a lottery. And the lotteries there's several different lotteries that happen. For instance, if you're a veteran, you get placed in a different lottery. If you have a disability, you go in a different lottery. If you are, let's say this is a Rockport lottery, you get to go in 2 lotteries because you're a Rockport. We give a priority to residents. And then literally those are picked out of a hat. And then they are continually qualified. You have to be, every year you have to get requalified. Let's say you inherited $100,000 from your parents, or you got a great job and so that your income went up, then there is a different way to you have to requalify for those kinds of things. Does that help answer your question? I wish I could show it to you if you wanted to see the Granite Street Crossing one, their marketing plan and their lottery plan.
So one of the challenges that the town has is the reducing number of students in school. Can there be part of the qualifications that you need to have children? Can that be a part of the requirements for people that are looking to buy one of these affordable units?
The builders, the affordable housing builders usually will build a building.
I'm at the town or whoever's regulating the
We can-
process of approving.
Well, yeah, we can, the trust is going to put forward, we need both family housing and senior housing. So it's like Granite Street Crossing, they put, we can also build 100% family housing.
So family housing means children.
Mhm.
Yes, exactly. 2 and 3 bedroom homes or apartments, townhomes those are townhomes in Granite Street Crossing. So absolutely, those are our 2 priorities. So we're looking at both. We're the oldest by age community in the state.
Right.
We're gonna have a hard time getting through town meeting or whatever to do 100%, 100% family housing, but it's not off the table.
So is it possible to influence builders that want or developers that come in here to use a certain portion of their workforce from local Cape Ann tradespeople?
I don't know.
No. Could we ask them?
Kathy, do you have an answer for that? Could you speak up a little bit?
It's a great idea to think about what other kind of
requirements.
Mhm.
The attached, as Diane's already alluded to, they're thinking about them already, but that is something that other towns have done.
Thank you, Kathy. It's a great idea because again, our school system's just gonna have to go regional and not be able to sustain if we do not get families in. So we'll put that on the fire. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes?
Yes, hi, Joe Mueller. Diane, I think one of the real positive things that I've heard today is the progress that you announced early in the meeting in regard to one or more parcels of land that the town owns. Could you talk some more about that and where, you know, the process may be going, as well as are you starting any discussions with any potential contractors? And what is this whole timeline look at? This, to me, seems a way forward in getting something done.
Yep, we're very excited about it. The town, right now, it is in the hands of the town attorney to see how that land transfer would happen, how it could happen. We would be negotiated between the town, probably the select board and the trust, exactly how that would, there's several different ways in which it could work out. We've had an affordable housing builder walk the land first before we even proceeded to see if it was even developable. Is there enough flat land, you know, to take a look at? And both parcels, they said yes to. So as soon as we hear from the town attorney, we'll go into some negotiations about how that transfer would happen. Last time I talked to our town administrator, he seemed to think that determination will happen imminently, which is very exciting. I was hoping I could say it today, but I can't. So, anyway, so yes, and then if the trust has enough money to put into, to help this builder, whoever the builder happens to be, because we have to put it out for bids. In other words, we can't just say, pick somebody, that we help fund them early on in the process. That's going to expedite it beyond what Granite Street Crossing took 6 years. Well, beyond, we will be able to expedite it much better. Thanks for the question.
Any other questions? Amy and then Gerard.
Right. Is it a secret what these properties are? When you talked about the properties early on, that's exciting.
It's not a secret. You know, it's hard because it's not a for sure. I don't want people to get excited. I'll tell you, one of the properties is over by the police station. The other property is closer in town.
Anybody else? Gerard, we said you next, okay?
Yeah, it's an excellent presentation today, but I'm just curious how all of what you said jives with what the town is proposing. I wasn't at the meeting on Thursday night, the planning board meetings where they presented 10% capacity for affordable housing and 80% maximum, I guess.
Yeah, that's inclusionary zoning. Inclusionary zoning is usually for much smaller projects. In other words, a percentage of 6 units or more is 1% of affordable housing. And for 10 units, 14 up to 14 units, it is 15% affordable housing. And that's up to those are particularly around private developers, because for affordable housing developers, it's not feasible for them to build those very small projects. So those would be particularly attractive to for-profit builders. And we have small pieces of land, and for small pieces of land, we as the trust are looking for something. Our vision is a little bit larger than that.
Thank you, Tom. Is there anyone else on the Zoom that is waiting for a question? Okay, then, Toby.
Thank you. The presentation on the zoning article was in terms of the cost of people buying the units. and the income levels for that. There was missing, and I would think it would be more important and more to the point, more helpful, a chart that would show the rents that would qualify you as affordable. That was simply missing. And something that was missing altogether from the zoning discussion of the zoning article, and I missed it as well. The affordable housing and is nailed in the deeds. If you read through the particulars of the zoning article, Essex deeds, and it's for real. Is it permanent or I believe with 40B housing, what the state uses to threaten all of us and terrorize us, that the requirements expire after 20 or is it 30 years? That certainly happened with the Pigeon Cove ledges. So it isn't my imagination. And that's affordable housing now because the same unit that did Rockport Granite Street Crossing stepped forward and bought it. Otherwise, that would be market rate housing. So is the zoning going to require that the units be permanently affordable?
I can't talk for the zoning board, but for affordable housing, anything that the trust would be thinking about with an affordable housing builder would be in perpetuity.
Are there any other questions? So what I had hoped, it's 5 to 2, we pretty much have to wrap up, but what we're really interested in is what else do you want to know? Because we will plan more forums. And on the table there, and if you raise your hand, I'll give you a paper just to jot down something that you'd like to know and just stick it on that board. And in the future, we will try to incorporate things you want to know about. I think, and then there are also handouts over there, some of what was spoken about today. And again, if you want to know something special, write to us. Also, the Rockport Affordable Housing Coalition, who brought you this presentation today, would love to have you get in touch and have a coffee and learn more about us. It doesn't mean you're committing your life. You could decide to work with us, you could not. But I think if the town is going to move forward on this, it's a long process. We really have to get together. We really have to use our voices, come to select board, come to planning board, join a citizens group. You know, it doesn't take hours a week, you know, and it looks like most of us are kind of in the similar age group. So maybe you're looking for something to do, Ethan. You know, something meaningful, especially now working on the local level to mitigate anything that might be going on a higher level. Anyway, thanks so much for coming and for your thoughts, your questions, your ideas, but stick with us a little bit. And raise your hand if you have a question.